Time indeed to talk some smack. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an exciting edition of SmackTalk. I am Nate the Effing Great, and I am proud to say the new Squared Circle, no, Elite Ringside Network champion Spencer Hart is not here today. So I probably saved a lot of people on a headache. Unfortunately, Max Beatty is not here as well. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, they were not able to record SmackDown Live's Smack Talk last night. So I have been given the honor and privilege of taking over for the show again this week. Hopefully you guys are not sick and tired of my voice yet. So thank you guys so much for joining in. Let's talk about SmackDown and a couple other things that are actually going to be going on, especially for this summer, really. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just realized what was going to happen on, what was it? I think it was, oh boy. I think it was for the summertime. I can't remember what exactly the date was, but I'm going to actually talk a little bit more about it during the thing. Sorry, I just got so many comments on there that I did not want. Alright, so let's just get right into it. Let's talk about SmackDown. So SmackDown kicks off with Shane McMahon and Jinder Mahal, I believe, where Jinder Mahal was taking pictures of himself in the WWE Championship, making it seem like he is going to be the champion coming out of Backlash. Shane McMahon says that these titles are earned, they are not, stolen, and Jinder Mahal says it's not going to matter because after he beats Randy Orton on Sunday, he's going to earn that title. And basically Shane says, well, until then, I'm going to return this title to its rightful owner, takes the belt away from Jinder. He kicks off SmackDown as well, talking about the new SmackDown signee and new United States champion Chris Jericho. Great reaction. Awesome. Very interesting to see Jericho as the new SmackDown United States champion. Still in shock that was even a title change on Sunday. But I guess I can understand why they did it. I think that they were running out of star power, so they just had to really find a way to bring in more people to SmackDown Live, which I want to kind of discuss maybe later on in an episode on Friday. Talking about the brand split, cut in half deal was not the best thing that they could have done. But anyway, Shane McMahon books Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens for the United States Championship later on in the night. Then AJ Styles comes out, and while Jericho called it the show of Jericho, tune in, man. AJ said that SmackDown was the house that AJ Styles built, and that he was going to be honored and privileged to take the belt away from Chris Jericho. That is, if he can get past Kevin Owens. Chris Jericho's reply, you know what happens when you don't believe that I can beat Kevin Owens tonight? You know what happens? And that he's about to put him on the list, but then Kevin Owens comes out and says that Shane, AJ, and Jericho arguing about things that don't matter is the most pathetic thing that he's seen in his career. God, I love you, Kevin Owens. Owens says the only thing that matters tonight is that he's taking back what's rightfully his, the U.S. title. That he even says that, yeah, AJ, this may be the house that you built, but I'm giving you only a few minutes of time to get the hell out of my ring. AJ Styles is just like, you know what, screw it. So he just goes on the attack, attacks Kevin Owens. Referees and everything have to break him up. It just was a very cool it was a very cool moment just to see AJ Styles and Kevin Owens brawling. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. Well, you've already seen SmackDown, so you know what really happens. We get to our first matchup, which is Jinder Mahal defeating Sami Zayn. The Bollywood Boys, or the Singh brothers, they indeed get involved in this matchup, but it was a pretty decent matchup. There was probably one spot that was pretty bad, and that was a botched tornado DDT that Sami Zayn hit on Jinder. The Singh brothers distract a referee, and then they distract Sami Zayn, and then Jinder Mahal hits the Cobra Clutch Slam maneuver. I guess the $1 Million Dream Slam. Well, somebody's calling it the $1 Million Dream Slam. It was also known as the Dream. Was it like I think it was. Well, it was like the Dream Sweep. Was it what that was called? Can't remember. But Jinder Mahal gets the victory, building momentum. a lot of people are definitely still not really high on the the whole Jinder train about having him be the number one contender. Jinder getting pushed like this is a very interesting move by WWE, and it may be due to the fact because they're doing something with India or something like that. Maybe that's where they're getting more of their, of course, fan base. But it's still a very interesting spot to say the least. Either way, I am looking forward to seeing Jinder Mahal versus Randy Orton at Backlash. I think it's going to be a great matchup, and I think that it's going to be a really good build-up, especially considering that they're still going to be really promoting the whole idea that Rusev is probably going to leave SmackDown if he does not get a title shot at Money in the Bank. I think a lot of people forgot about that, but it's one of those things where I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that'd be really cool to see Randy Orton versus, Rusev. I think Rusev versus Jinder Mahal would be a bad idea, but if they gave Jinder Mahal the right push, I think that it would still make for a good matchup. There's a backstage segment where Becky Lynch is confronted by the group of Natalya, Carmella, Tamina, and James Ellsworth. And it was a interesting backstage deal, to say the least, where Natalya basically extends an olive branch saying, hey, we can have your back. We can ensure that, that you're women's champion and that, there's strength in numbers. You should join us. And Becky basically says that, she'll think about it. She possibly could be turning heel. We don't know. Another backstage segment which shows Dolph Ziggler, talk about Shinsuke Nakamura, and Shane McMahon just basically says, hey, he gave you kind of a bit of an impression last week, but Ziggler's just like, shh, I'm not really that, impressed. But you will be impressed on what I do with scene cards tonight. And I'm going to talk very heavily about this because this is very interesting. So we get into another matchup: Aiden English versus Ty Dillinger. Ty Dillinger picks up the win with a fireman's carry into a knee to the face. Interesting finishing maneuver, but I guess it was. Ty Dillinger continues his winning streak. Aiden English, is crying after the matchup. He goes from a singing gimmick to a crying gimmick. Great. Then they go into a Chris Jericho backstage interview segment. Aiden English is passing by crying, and Jericho's just like, hey man, something, you shouldn't be crying. You're on SmackDown. You're talented. Hey, you can sing. And besides, do you know what happens when you cry on Chris Jericho SmackDown? Do you know what happens? Picks up the pen, click. You just made the list! And then he looks at Renee Young and says, you just made the list too. For what reasons? Nobody knows. Nobody really cares exactly. Then we go into a backstage interview with Charlotte, where she ends up getting attacked by Natalya, Carmella, and Tamina. So obviously they're really just doing something crazy with this random tag team deal. Faction, I guess I could say. And then it falls into a matchup in which it seems like it was going to be a handicap match. Natalya and Carmella versus Naomi. But then Charlotte comes out. She's showing a bit of, licking her wounds, stuff like that. Gets a tag in. It seems like Charlotte is turning babyface now, which is interesting, to say the least. But in the end, Naomi gets pinned by Carmella by Carmella using a roll-up with a handful of tights for the win. Then after the matchup comes out, Natalya, Tamina, and Carmella beat down Naomi and Charlotte, and then Becky Lynch's music hits. She comes out. She decides to shake hands with everybody, gives some people a hug, and then actually, throws out Ellsworth, and then just starts beating down on everybody until Tamina comes in and lays out Becky Lynch. And then the heels just celebrate over the babyfaces' bodies. So, this faction here between Natalya, Tamina, Carmella, and James Ellsworth, I kind of don't understand the point of it. Because I can understand that a lot of factions, they do a great job as to just building up the, they start helping and building up, other stars. But really, in all honesty, Tamina should be going by herself in my opinion. She does a great job as just this impressive force who's just, beats down on everybody. And then you have you have Carmella and James Ellsworth, which I still don't understand why they are a thing. James Ellsworth is just not as popular as, he was before. If they would have done this, building up to when James Ellsworth was popular, that would have made sense. But right now it's just at the point where it's pointless. Having Natalia there, I think she's just kind of like the leader. She's kind of the front runner. Makes sense, really. I just don't understand this whole entire deal. I don't know what they're going to call it. I'm just hoping it's not going to be something really stupid. But having Naomi, Charlotte, and Becky Lynch together just as like a small unit, that's fine. But you need to also remember that SmackDown Live's entire women's roster is only comprising of 6 people right now. They need more. They need more women. The problem also is that you see it on Raw. They have a lot more women to work with. They had an 8 women's tag match, which I have not seen in a long time. So they could really have like 4 different rivalries going on there. And unfortunately for SmackDown, they're still reduced down to 3. So SmackDown Live really needs to ramp up their women's division a bit, because otherwise we're going to see the same matches over and over and over again. And that's not good for SmackDown Live. And again, it's going to go into my, rant that I'll go into on Friday. So I'll talk a little more a bit about that then. We move on to another matchup, Sin Cara taking on Dolph Ziggler. This was interesting, to say the least, because I will say this, Sin Cara looked amazing in this matchup. I mean, for him to do the whole deadlift powerbomb deal to Dolph Ziggler, a guy who's probably at least maybe a foot or 2 higher than Sin Cara, that's impressive strength right there. I was very impressed by Sin Cara. I thought he did a great job. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, it's Botch Cara. No, he actually did a pretty damn good job. The attire that he was wearing left me kind of scratching my head like, what the hell is this? This is kind of something generic. It's kind of weird. It's just one of those things that I looked at and I thought, because he basically has these black trunks with like blue designs on the side, and then he has like this very bluish aqua blue top, and then the black and blue mask. And with white boots, it just was really weird. It was one of those things where I'm like, wow, this is like a real interesting deal. This is like kind of something like if you're starting off as a wrestler, this would be something that you would have as your first kind of gimmick, I guess. So maybe Sin Cara is trying to change up his gimmick. This one I don't think is really a good, successful gimmick. But you know what? The attire doesn't always make the wrestler. It's the wrestling that makes the wrestler. And Sin Cara looked amazing in here. But unfortunately, he fell victim to Dolph Ziggler's super kick and was beaten for the 1-2-3. But it was still a very, very good matchup for them. Another promoting video of Lana's debut on SmackDown as the Russian, ravishing Russian dancer, I guess we'll call it. I'm very interested in seeing how she does in the women's division. So I might have spoken too soon, but it's good to see that they're finally bringing more women over to SmackDown. And I think that having Lana in the women's division will definitely do some wonders. And honestly, she's a really good dancer, and I'm guessing she's doing pretty good in the ring. So let's hope that this doesn't turn into like an Eva Marie deal, but I highly doubt that's what's going to happen. So we get into the next segment, which is a very interesting deal. This is the Fashion Files, in which it was kind of like a Law and Order style deal, in which the Fashion Police, Fandango, and Tyler Breeze, they're talking about some of the offenses. They're basically talking about how they have fashion related